What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Playthrough. The Resident Evil playthrough continues on with Resident Evil Revelations 2. So overall, I actually had a lot of fun with this game. Now, before I get started, I just want to invite you over to my channel, Trezinator, where I play through entire video game franchises from start to finish in chronological order, and then I review and rank them along the way. So if that's something you'd be interested in viewing, then head on over to my channel and please give me a subscribe. I will be forever grateful. Anyway, let's continue on with the Resident Evil franchise with Revelations 2. Overall, I thought the story was pretty good. The cinematics looked great. Originally, this game was released episodically, so episode 1 and 2 were released maybe like a few weeks to a few months apart. The full game was released on March 17th, 2015 on the PS3 and PS4. I believe the Xbox version came out a day later. And the game was directed by Yasuhiro Ampo and written by Dai Sato. So overall, I liked the story, and we'll get right into the plot synopsis of it. It takes place in two different time frames. Chapter 1 takes place with Claire and Moira Burton, Barry Burton's daughter. They get captured, taken to this island, and then the second half of the chapter takes place with Barry trying to find Moira, and he finds a test subject, a little girl named Natalia, and this takes place 6 months after what happens in the first half of the chapters. Well, the plot synopsis of Resident Evil Revelations 2 is very long, so let's get on with it here. Here we go. Claire Redfield and Moira Burton, daughter of Barry Burton, work for a biohazard prevention agency, TerraSave. While attending an office party, they and several other TerraSave members are captured by armed mercenaries. Claire and Moira are taken to a facility on Shem Island, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, where they are attacked by the Afflicted, humans driven insane by torturous experiments. An unknown woman calling herself the Overseer watches via cameras and tells them the bracelets on their wrists record fear as the pair try to find safety. Upon reaching a radio tower, they call for help. Once Barry reaches the island, he immediately meets Natalia, a strange little girl. Together, they head to the radio tower, encountering many dangerous situations along the way. Unfortunately, Barry arrives very late, as the distress call was actually made 6 months ago. After suffering a severe headache, Natalia claims Moira is dead. Claire and Moira meet up with their co-workers, Gabriel Chavez and Pedro Fernandez, at the Wasek, a derelict pub located in an abandoned fishing village. The Overseer explains that they have become her new test subjects for T-Phobos, a virus that responds to fear, having previously injected each of them. Gabe leads Claire to a broken helicopter they intend to fix in order to flee the island, but they soon find themselves ambushed by a horde of Afflicted, separating Claire, Moira, and Pedro from Gabe and the helicopter. Pedro succumbs to fear and is transformed into a monster. Claire and Moira fight off both Pedro and the Afflicted until their boss, Neil Fisher, arrives to help them escape. They decide to make their way to the Overseer's tower, but are once again ambushed, and Neil stays behind to lure the monsters away. Claire and Moira catch up with Natalia, who has been roaming the island alone. Gabe fixes the helicopter and attempts to escape, but the Overseer remotely sabotages the controls, killing him. As Claire and Moira are distracted by the crash, Natalia is kidnapped and taken to the Overseer, who intends to transfer her consciousness into the little girl. 6 months later, Natalia takes Barry to the Overseer's tower, the place she last saw Moira alive. Along the way, Barry learns Natalia is an orphan and her parents died in the Terra Grigia incident, the trauma having left her immune to fear. Inside the tower, they find a portrait depicting Albert Wesker and a woman. When Barry recognizes his name, Natalia corrects him by stating that the woman is named Wesker. They are then surprised by the Overseer, a grotesque hunchback figure who neutralizes Barry and reveals herself to be Alex Wesker. Claire and Moira follow a note supposedly left by Neil to meet him at the facility nearby. However, they fail to locate him and end up walking into a series of traps, which they narrowly survive. After passing through the sewers, the pair gain access to the Overseer's tower, where they witness a meeting between Neil and Alex Wesker. It is revealed that Neil intends to release Ouroboros to justify restoring the FBC, having betrayed TerraSave. Wesker spitefully injects Neil with Ouroboros instead, causing him to mutate into a hulking monstrosity. Claire and Moira have no choice but to kill him. 6 months later, Barry and Natalia escape from the mutilated Alex and work their way from the sewer back to the surface. As they go, Barry tells Natalia about a tragic event concerning his 2 daughters. Moira accidentally shot her younger sister Polly when they were playing with one of Barry's guns. Although the fault was his, Barry blamed Moira for the accident, causing a huge strain on their relationship. Polly survived, but Moira developed a deep fear of guns as a result of the incident. Upon reaching the surface, Barry and Natalia travel through a dilapidated mine infested with monsters. Alex ambushes them on the other side and throws Barry into a ravine. But when she tries to kill Natalia, the little girl impassively stares back into her eyes, causing Alex to withdraw in terror. After Neil's demise, Claire and Moira make their way up to the monument to confront Alex Wesker, and the duo learn of her intentions to conquer fear and escape death. She shoots herself in the head, triggering a self-destruct sequence that forces Claire and Moira to flee. Unbeknownst to them, Alex experiences fear in her last living moments and begins to mutate. As they rush to descend the crumbling tower, Moira sacrifices herself so that Claire can escape. Claire is rescued shortly afterwards. She regretfully tells Barry that she could not save Moira, but Barry refuses to accept his daughter's death and continues to search for her. 6 months later, Barry and Natalia pass through several toxic mine tunnels before reaching Alex's research facility disguised as a mansion. They make their way through as Alex taunts Natalia via her bracelet. When the duo confronts her, she injects herself with Ouroboros and mutates a second time to fight Barry and Natalia. Apparently, killing her, Alex suddenly springs to life and incapacitates Barry. She grabs Natalia and once again attempts to kill her. At this point, the story proceeds to one of two endings. In the bad ending, where Claire defeats Neil, thus preventing Moira from overcoming her fear of guns, Moira dies after being crushed by falling debris during the tower's destruction. Alex then manages to squeeze Natalia to death. With her mind gone, Alex fully awakens in Natalia's body and easily destroys her former mutated body. She then mocks Barry, who cannot bring himself to shoot the little girl he once knew. Alex walks away, leaving him in despair. In the good ending, where Moira defeats Neil and subsequently overcomes her fear of guns, Moira survives and arrives in time to save Natalia, temporarily repelling Alex with gunshots. Barry, Moira, and Natalia escape the area, but Alex, mutating even further, gives chase and ultimately corners them on the edge of a cliff. Claire arrives in a helicopter to rescue the trio, and with their combined efforts, they manage to take down Alex with a rocket launcher. As they leave the island, Barry reconciles with Moira and expresses his intention to adopt and raise Natalia as his own daughter. In an epilogue, Claire is informed that her brother is in China, to which she responds, "Tell Piers to take care of him." She heads towards Barry's home, where Natalia, surrounded by newspapers reporting the events of Resident Evil 6, finishes reading The Zurau Aphorisms by Frank Kafka and smiles ominously, revealing that Alex succeeded to some extent in taking over her body. Okay, so Resident Evil Revelations 2, I thought, had a fantastic cinematic experience. And also, you get to play as Barry Burton, which is pretty awesome in my book. The going back and forth between the two 6-month time frames from Part A to Part B, I thoroughly enjoyed because it helped you kind of unravel the mystery of what was going on within the story. Now, I will say that I was unaware that you needed to get the gun as Moira in order to shoot and kill Neil. I think his name's Neil. In order to get the good ending. I think that's kind of, I don't know, not... like, it wasn't spelled out for me. I get where they're coming from, where everything needs to come full circle because Moira had like this fear of guns because of this accident that you find out about later, and she overcomes it. I didn't know that was what was going to give me like the good, I'm assuming, canon ending. So that didn't happen for me. So I got the bad ending. And then at the end, I was like, that's it? What the hell is this? I do think it was a good use of characters. I mean, this is like an all-star cast here. I like Natalia as a new character. And this game was scary. It was scarier than some of the more recent ones that I've played. More so than Resident Evil 5, more so than Revelations 1. Revelations 1 had its scare factors here or there. But there was like a few times where it just completely caught me off guard and scared the shit out of me. The emblem on it. Oh shit! Fuck! Jesus Christ. Well, now I'm awake. And I like the ending because even if you got the good or the bad ending, it still leaves it open for Revelations 3, which I know is rumored to be happening on the Switch. And I think the Switch is a good format for Revelations, for like the episodic titles and for this type of Resident Evil game. So we might not be seeing the end of Alex Wesker. And now for the graphics and design. The game looks great. Even playing it on Switch like I did, it still looked and ran fantastic. There was a few times here and there where I had a couple dropped frame rates, but I think that's more so the Switch and not the game's fault. And this game really succeeds where Resident Evil Revelations 1 had failed. It went above and beyond with everything. It almost kind of felt like a meld of Revelations 1 and Resident Evil 0 with going back and forth. Now, there might be like a quick part in the beginning that told me when and how I can use the like stay there, follow me functions for each character. And I might have completely missed that because there were a couple parts in the game where I needed my partner to stay at a certain area while I go do something and then come back to them, and I completely forgot how to do it. And there was actually even one part where you have to like get through this door and you have to pull the lever as one character, and I'm trying to run down the hallway to get to the door and I kept missing it, and I actually plugged in a second controller and split screened it for like a couple minutes to get through that part. It wasn't until later where I looked it up, how do you use the controls to make someone stay in one spot and then follow you, and the only reason why I did that was because I needed to do a similar situation with Moira and Claire later. And there's only a handful of times that you have to use this function, but I feel like it would have been better if the game kind of like gave you that hint of this is how you do it. And I can't remember if it told me how to do it in the beginning, but if it did, I completely forgot about it. Now, this game didn't feel as small as Revelations 1 did. It felt like there was more bandwidth. It felt like they were able to have multiple enemies come on screen, and I'm sure they were, because this game came out years after Revelations 1. I do like the inclusion of the skill tree also. I think this is the first time we're ever seeing a skill tree in Resident Evil. It fit very well with the play style and the dynamic of Resident Evil Revelations games. Whereas the first Revelations game kind of focused on just kind of upgrading your weapon, I feel like there was a lot less upgrading your weapon in this game. I don't remember getting as many weapon parts as I did in the first one. And I feel like this one was more focused on that skill tree, with upgrading your weapon kind of being like a secondary feature. The boss fights in this game are kind of similar to like the boss fights in Resident Evil 4, where you will fight a boss and then that boss will kind of become like a regular enemy throughout the rest of the game, which I don't mind, but it does kind of take away from the boss fights a little bit. There are exceptions. I mean, Neil and the other member of your crew who was like the drill boss fight, his name is escaping me right now. I mean, those guys didn't really come back, but you do get the guy with like the cannon. You get, I was calling him the dick monster because he has this like big trunk that hangs down in front of the area that you need to shoot. I don't know what his monster name is. And the final boss was great. It was a long boss fight. You kind of just had to take your time and dodge her attacks and keep your distance from her, and then conserve your ammo and shoot when you knew that you were able to hit that spot on her chest. Alex Wesker, I thought, was a great villain. I thought this boss fight was probably one of the better boss fights in the series. And overall, I had a really fun time playing this. And I've also come to the realization that at the end of every Resident Evil game, actually every Resident Evil game has the same two things going for it, right? At the end, you always wind up killing the boss with a rocket launcher in a cutscene. Almost every time. And every single Resident Evil has an underground laboratory in it. So all in all, I thought this game was great. I had a lot more fun with this than I did with the first one. I thought it was a much more polished game than the first one. I even think I had more fun with this than I did with Resident Evil 5. So the question is, does it beat Resident Evil 0? And I'm going to say, yes, it does. I think this is better than Resident Evil 0 as well. I think it does a much better job of switching between the characters. Although Resident Evil 0, you kind of had to figure out more puzzles between the characters. This one, each character had their, I didn't even talk about this, each character has their own skill. So Moira and Natalia aren't necessarily attackers, but they're kind of like support characters as opposed to Barry and Claire. And I thought that dynamic really fit with this game. It looks like ever since Resident Evil had released 0, they're really doubling down on this playstyle of like two character playstyle, and I think it peaks in this game. So that's where I'm gonna put it. So I'm gonna put Resident Evil Revelations 2 above Resident Evil 0. So right now, after playing Resident Evil Revelations 2, the complete rankings for the Resident Evil franchise at this moment are Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Resident Evil 3 Remake, Resident Evil HD Remake, Resident Evil Revelations 2, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil Revelations. Next up, I am playing Resident Evil 6, and I have heard not great things about it. This is the first time I'm diving in. I remember when the game initially was releasing, the demo had come out, I played the demo, and I was like, I don't like this at all. I'll wait for the reviews. The reviews came out. They were not favorable. So I wound up never buying it. So I'm trying to go in with an open mind, and we'll see exactly how this game stacks up. I know a lot of people rank it as the worst one, but who knows? Maybe I'll go in and I'll like it. I guess we'll see. As always, if you like this video, it would mean a lot to me if you give it a big thumbs up. If you want to watch me play through other video game franchises as well as the Resident Evil franchise, then head on over to my channel, Trezinator, and subscribe and watch this video series, The Playthrough. I also stream my playthroughs a couple days a week, so you can check the description to see when my stream schedule is. And let me know where you think Revelations 2 should fall, if you've played it, if you've matched it up against the other games, and also give me suggestions on other games that you would like to see me play through on this show. So without further ado, thank you again for joining me, and I hope to see you next time on my Resident Evil 6 review.